Welcome back. This is episode 2 to The Language of Abuse, the series where we are looking at clearly defining some of the most commonly used and misused terms in the modern mental health space. And today we're going to be looking at probably one of the most important words when it comes to making somebody do something that they wouldn't ordinarily do. This is the core or the root of destructive influence, of manipulation, of mind control, okay? Today we're looking at what is dependency. What actually is dependency? And if you look this up, right, and you go onto your search engine, you just type in what is dependency, I've got the results. It says something like a situation in which you need something or someone and are unable to continue normally without them. Essentially, dependency is something that you need. So what does need mean? If you look up need, a nutrient required to ensure the continuation or the survival of an organism. Need is something that is essential to the survival of something that is living, okay? If you need it, if you need something, then it's a matter of life and death, really. If you don't get it, okay, you need oxygen, right? You don't get oxygen, you die. You need food, you need to eat. Don't eat, you die. You need water, you need to drink. Don't drink, guess what happens? You die. So when it comes to the context of narcissistic abuse, when you look at narcissism, or you look at abusers really in general, they need you to need them. It's like that scene in V for Vendetta where the big brother fella is yelling that exact phrase.
I want this country to realize that we stand on the edge of oblivion. I want every man, woman, and child to understand how close we are to chaos. I want everyone to remember why they need us.
Great scene. But it really does capture the essence of dependency. Because when you have an abuser who is attempting to use you to sustain their life, they need to make you depend on them so that you give them everything. Because if you don't, you face the death. You face the annihilation. If you need them, then you cannot live without them. That is what this means. That is really the definition of dependency. If you don't have it, you die. There's some great examples. If you have a look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you might be kind of familiar with this, but there's this structure of needs that at the very, very base of this pyramid, you have the physiological needs that a human being without these things dies pretty quickly. Some of the examples I mentioned already: air, water, food, shelter. And until you've taken care of your basic physiological needs, things like security or employment or resources aren't important. Not yet. But once you've taken care of them, you can start to build up this hierarchy of needs. At least that's the idea. Until you can start to focus on more psychological needs and fulfillment needs as well. So where perhaps a more basic manipulator might try to deprive you of food or try to deprive you of shelter. In your previous relationship, you're probably more likely to have had dependency created around some of these other levels. Let's take your boss as an example. Your boss isn't necessarily going to attempt to make you depend on them for air and for water and for food, but they might go after employment. You might rely on your boss to keep your job, to keep the flow of income coming, to support your family. You need them to stay employed. You need them to have access to your healthcare plan or your pension. If you don't keep your boss happy, then all of that stuff is at risk. And this is because you depend on them. You need them for access to those things. And if you have a look at the top one, you have a look at the top item there, self-actualization, and this idea of the self. This idea of the self was discussed by a lot of psychiatrists, a lot of psychologists, and even philosophers ruminated over what is the self and what is the essence of who you are that is experiencing the world, right? And what is extremely common in cults, in toxic relationships, when it comes to getting close to a narcissist, is that your very sense of who you are depends on them. There is a dependency set up for your purpose, your very identity. So there are 4 types of dependency I want to discuss. The first is pretty simple. Dependency itself where you have one party who is dependent on another for survival. Classic example is children. Little kids cannot survive without their mum and their dad. If there's no mum there or dad there to feed them, clothe them, put a roof over their head, keep them safe, then the child cannot do that themselves. The child depends on the parent for survival. Dependency is about survival. So the second is codependence, and this is where each party is reliant on the other for survival. Party A depends on party B, party B depends on party A. And in abusive relationships, and when we come to talk about narcissistic abuse, one party needs to be needed and the other needs to be looked after. The third is independence, and this is, in my opinion, commonly mistaken to be the solution to codependence. When you're so dependent and reliant on some other party or some other group to keep you safe, to provide you with what you need to survive, then the immediate reaction, and to a certain extent it is actually true, is to become more self-sufficient. And it is, but not entirely. There is a myth of complete independence where you become so detached from everybody else that you become so reliant on yourself that, in my opinion, it's not actually possible. You can't become so detached from other people that you are entirely 100% reliant on you for everything. I don't think this happens. I mean, how this would actually look is you essentially disappearing off into the woods with a bucket and basically becoming a hermit. All of this stuff where, disappear for 6 months and become unrecognizable. That's isolation in disguise, folks. I think the goal for us to move towards is actually something called interdependence, which is basically a way of saying that you rely on yourself and others in a healthy way to have a safe, supporting network of people that genuinely care and benefit you in your life. What we're talking about here is quality relationships, reliable relationships, ones that don't sap your energy but give it to you. And in return, of course, you are then benefiting them as well. You are putting energy into their social network, and they are then returning energy into your social network, not in a way that drains you of energy, but one that builds you up as well. And I would argue that the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is only actually possible when you have true interdependence. You take a look at some of the higher levels, you look at love and belonging, you look at esteem, all of that comes from interdependence. You can't have friendship without other people. You cannot have intimacy or a sense of connection without other people. Good luck getting respect from others living in the woods alone. Good luck getting self-esteem, status, and reputation from isolating yourself for 6 months and hoping to come back unrecognizable. Well, guess what happens when you do come back? No one recognizes you. Okay? So when it comes to dependency, if you're coming out of this toxic relationship where essentially you've needed them for your sense of purpose, your sense of identity, your sense of self, and possibly your sense of salvation and feeling safe as well, then it will begin with a move towards independence and starting to learn to make decisions for yourself again. And eventually then start to recognize the difference between what is a dangerous and, I suppose, vampiric relationship with other people, a narcissistic relationship with other people, and a more healthy and secure and beneficial relationship with a social network where it looks more like this. You are a node in a healthy supporting network as opposed to the battery for somebody else's life, right? That's the direction that we want to be moving into. And look, it's really my view that you cannot recover alone. First thing I did for one reason or another when my marriage fell apart was phone my sister. Now, I hadn't spoken to her in quite some time, but there was something to be said, looking back on it, for phoning her up and just spilling out everything down the phone to her that made me for a short period feel seen and heard, that someone for the first time was actually just listening to me and it was being taken in. It's kind of like being on one of those high ropes courses where, you know, you're 30, 40 feet above the ground and you've strapped yourself into one of these wires. You feel pretty safe taking that leap, right? Because you're carabined in, you've got a safety rope, there's a net, there's a spotter telling you, you know, how to do it. You feel pretty safe jumping into oblivion and, you know you're going to be all right. But when you don't have the spotter, when you don't have the net, when you don't have the backup cable and all of your hope and faith and trust is put on a single carabiner, then you've only got one thing to depend on, and all of your faith and all of your trust and all of your need and all of your sense of whether you're going to live or whether you're going to die depends on that one rope, which is them. And that is what dependency is. Dependency is that final rope, is something that you need. Something you need is something you cannot live without. If you need them, you cannot live without them. And that is why it's so hard to leave an abusive relationship. Okay, so if you have any questions, please do go ahead and stick them in the comments. If you found this one helpful, you like this video, do give it a thumbs up as well. And if you're ready to look at one way in which dependency is set up, the next video is all about love bombing, and it's not just doing really nice things for somebody as well. So do check that one out. Click the link up here, and I'll see you in just a sec.